Hello, and welcome to the Kathleen Spracklin podcast. I am a woman on a mission to gather a cadre of writers, thinkers, and teachers who are transforming the world, one character at a time. And it all starts with one thing, a deep understanding of human motivation, why people do what they do, and the forces that drive them. But lately, I've been teaching Zettelkasten, and today is no exception. Yesterday, I did a video that drew a fair amount of comment. I was talking about what should stay on a bib card and what should be promoted onto a main card. There are different types of material that you gather onto your bib card, and not everything has to come over to a main card. Just some very special notes come on over. And so it drew a fair amount of comment, and I thought it would be helpful to give a concrete example today. So in order to assemble that example, I wanted to go to a book that was on my reading queue, but which I had not yet started, and just use that as an example. Create a bib card page from that book and make that determination following the rules that I presented yesterday, and use that as an example to show you in as close to real time as I can do in a video podcast like this. So the book that I chose is Impossible to Ignore by Carmen Simone, and it's quite an interesting book, and it's mostly about visual and graphic, small scale communications. So I created my card, and of course I had to create an author card. I already had an author card for this author. You may have recalled last time another book, Made You Look, that we played around with a bit. So I already had an author card for her, so I only had to add another line for this book. This book actually came before Made You Look. And I had to, of course, start a bib card. I'll show you that bib card, but I created actually two title cards. One, of course, that's going to show the author, the publication date, copyright, all the stuff that you normally put on a bib card. And then I created a separate A1, and the reason I wanted two is that on the first card, I gave my purpose for why that book was in my reading queue, but I realized that I also needed to be more specific about my purpose today. Since I wasn't really launching into the book at this time, I was simply going into it for a specific purpose. So I made a separate bib card with my avowed purpose, why I did that tonight. So you get to see both, and I wanted to very much share that with you so that you can see something of a realistic example of what I would put on a main card and what I would leave behind on a bib card, and you might be surprised at the proportions. So without further ado, let's go look at the cards. Okay, let's start off with our author card, Carmen Simone, and here was our first entry, Made You Look, and that bib card was R.CSMYL. This one's slightly different. I've got B. What's going on there? Well, this represents a suggestion made by Jay some time back that why does everything have to be R. We could use that as additional information, and I've been adopting that since. I'm using B. for books and V. for videos and J. for journal articles, and that's been kind of fun. I'm really enjoying that, and I thank you very much, Jay, for that suggestion. So as you notice, I did not go back and change anything in history. We don't do that in the world of Zettelkasten. Our Zettelkastens carry their own imprint of their history, which becomes part of what makes them very personal and very endearing to us as time goes by. So here's my original bib card. This is the bib card that I created at first thought. Okay, I'm going to be working with this book. So I collected all the normal information for the bib card, and I gave as my purpose, I wanted to explore the applicability to memorable fiction writing, because she, of course, isn't really primarily looking at fiction writing. Then I realized that's not exactly what's happening today. I wanted to make a specific example. And so therefore, I decided rather than having an artificial entry as though I were really ready to dive into that book, I made a different bib card. Okay, this bib card, it has a similar name, only I used A1, A being alternate to me. And I have an alternate purpose here. This time I wanted to find a selection that will illustrate what to put into a main card and what to leave behind on the bib card. So that meant I was going to have to go diving into the book for, I wonder what I should include on that card. And the most amazing thing happened. I just happened to, open the book. I was going to start looking around, and the book popped open right to this page. Could you believe it? Almost unbelievable. How to appeal to the feeling brain with memorable storytelling. You can't make this up. It's incredible. So, of course, these were the 2 pages. These 2 pages were the pages that I worked with in the bib card. It was just way too perfect. Okay, so here are all of the bib notes that I took from those 2 pages. And what I want you to have for the takeaway on this is I want you to, first of all, you're not going to be able to read every word, but I want you to see that there's a lot of notes here taken across 2 pages. I don't know if you can read the 178 and the 179. Most of them were from page 179. And then I'll tell you a little bit about what the notes were. And I want to also call your attention to this number in red, 3A7A2C. This is going to turn out to be the only main card that I created off of all of these bib notes. We'll be looking at that card in detail, but at the moment it's just a quick look, because I want to tell you what Carmen Simone has presented here. And this isn't even that entire section. This is just 2 pages, really more like 1.5 pages out of that section of 1 chapter. She brings up a really interesting story that has to do with the final episode of Mad Men. And she talks about a very interesting story that took place in that episode, where a man who wasn't even a main character in the show, they're in a sharing circle, and he shares how he doesn't feel seen. He works in a cubicle and everybody just walks by him at work and nobody seems to see him. And even when he gets home, nobody in his family even seems really to notice him. And then he explains how he had a dream where he was on the shelf in the refrigerator, and the members of the family came and opened the refrigerator and looked all around for food and didn't notice him on the shelf, and then closed the refrigerator door and the lights went off. And as he's telling the story, Simone tells us that tears are coming down his eyes. So then she talks about how moving this particular episode was. She gives us the number of viewers and the number of Twitter impressions on the show. And so, of course, we can relate immediately to the emotions in that story. Then she makes the statement, emotions solidify memory. I picked up on that right away as being probably of significance. So I underlined it, but of course I did not have a card number at the time. But suspecting that that might be a main card for me, I left space for it. I don't always leave space for them, and then I have to scrunch them in. That's another story. So then she goes on to give two examples, actually more than two examples, of what about in your life? Do you remember your first kiss? How about the first load of laundry you did? Oh, the kiss is memorable, the laundry isn't. Huh. Emotions solidify memory. All right, then she goes through the science of it. She's giving, all of the activities in the brain that lead to memories being formed. Lots and lots and lots of scientific examples here with details. So what's going to go onto a main card for me? And for me, as interesting as this story was, I might want to allude to it, but it isn't the main factor on the card. It's probably the main factor that will make this line memorable because it's a very compelling story. These details about how the brain works for me would only be interesting to me in reference. I'm kind of aware of them anyway because memories and emotions are kind of my thing. So this really wasn't dramatically new material. But then this whole issue of writing memorable stories isn't her main field. It's my main field, not hers. Okay, so now what is my main card going to be? Now again, I'm not going to expect you to read this, and I'll go back to the face-forward camera to talk about it some more, but I want you to take a look and notice the familiar elements that you're going to see on a main card. First of all, the first element that we always write on the main card is what we learned from the author. And what I want you to notice there, even without reading the whole thing, this is what I got from that bib card. I did not just get emotions solidify memory. No, I captured the author's thought. From the refrigerator guy in the last Mad Men episode to the amygdala modulating the visual cortex, science and social history both agree that emotions solidify memory. So that's what I took from this bib card. You see, I didn't just take that one statement, and I didn't take any given factoid. I took the bib card, the whole bib card was captured into this one thought, which to me starts the conversation. Then, in my own personal response, I brought back in my experience to this. And I would say that in a TV episode, the emotions can reside in the character who's crying, and we look at the character and we see the tears and we feel sympathy for the character with the tears. Or the emotions could reside in the viewer imagining himself sitting on the refrigerator shelf when the door closes and the light goes off. So then I respond, my final response, place your reader on that shelf. So here, Simone talks about emotions, but doesn't talk about where the emotions reside. And I want to make a distinction to add to that conversation that, yes, the man cried. So you could have been looking, oh, look, a man is crying. That's very sad. Or you could be imagining yourself on that refrigerator door, not being seen by your family members, and the door closes and you're in the dark. So that was my contribution to what the author had to say. Then the next thing that I have to do, as always, is I need to make a tagline. And the purpose of the tagline is not a title of the card. It is a phrase, a line, a sentence, something that will bring this whole card back. Both Simone's contribution and my contribution, all in one tagline. And the first one I came up with was just unworkably too long. Vicariously lived emotions solidify memory best. Just ask refrigerator guy. And I thought that did a very good job of capturing the whole card, but I don't want to take up 2 lines in my index. So I worked on it a bit and came up with this slightly shorter version that only takes 1 line. Vicarious emotions solidify memory of refrigerator guy. Now, someone out of the blue could read vicarious emotions solidify memory of refrigerator guy and say, what? What? But for me, it does what I need it to do. It brings this whole card back. And that's the purpose of a tagline. It's supposed to be a memory prompt phrase that will bring the whole card back. I identified vicarious, emotions, memory, refrigerator, and I even want to include guy because when I'm trying to remember this card, and if something goes wrong and I don't remember refrigerator, although I imagine I'd look it up by refrigerator, maybe I would need guy. So I'm even going to include guy. I didn't bother with solidify because forming the memories kind of carries that with it. And even when I actually started making my index entries, this became just a dash. So I had vicarious emotion dash, memories of refrigerator guy. Everything I need to bring this whole card back. And I'm going to drill that 4 times, maybe 5 if I include guy, when I put it into my index. So I hope that gives you an idea of the process that I use when I want to make a main card from the data. I don't want to keep every little data point because my Zettelkasten is a Zettelkasten of ideas. And I want the ideas to come to life, and they come to life when they interact with other ideas. If I made a bunch of fact cards, which I could have done, I could have captured the statistics from this card. Well, 3.5 million people watched the final episode of Mad Men, and 50 million people tweeted about it. Isn't that weird? That means it went out into the culture much more widely than the episode itself was viewed. So that means people were retelling that story. They found it so compelling. So I thought that was interesting, but it didn't make it to my main card, in part because there is no way that I am going to be able to run across this tagline and see refrigerator guy and not remember. I will probably even remember 3.5 million viewers and 50 million Twitter impressions. There's a darn good chance that I will remember that just because of the drama of this card. There are other facts that I'm not as likely to remember, but if I really needed them, I would go get them. Those are the scientific data points. So we're talking about emotional stimuli produces activity in brain centers that are responsible for encoding, storing, and recalling memories. That's not a surprise. It doesn't even tell you exactly which centers, but it does say that they're related. And also that I picked the one in my phrase to talk about the amygdala controlling the visual cortex. Not so much because I wanted to remember the word amygdala. I know what a visual cortex is. I don't use the word a lot, but I did it because I wanted to contrast between the Mad Men final episode and this highly scientific phrase to say that she's covered from one end to another. She's covered how memories are made. And when you think about it, she's actually covered it 3 ways. It's really brilliant writing on her part as well, because the first way she talks about it is sociologically. There's a good chance with 50 million Twitter impressions that you heard about Refrigerator Guy before you read her book. Then she talks about your own experiences. So, oh yeah, you do not remember that first laundry load, but the first kiss you do remember. Ho ho! So you validated it within yourself. Now she's brought it home to the personal level. And then the third level, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, science, 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 science. Oh, well, then it must be true. So you see the levels that she brought it through: sociology, personal experience, the scientific data. So she's really brought an enormous amount of pressure to bear on her simple phrase, emotions solidify memory. And yet, that one phrase, emotions solidify memory, is cold, it's boring, it doesn't invite conversation, it's kind of dead. The whole page isn't dead. The article isn't dead. It's alive. But boy, if you picked out that one phrase, even if in the moment when you wrote this down, it carried all those emotions, it's not going to carry them very long. There's not enough life in it. That's why I had to work hard on my tagline and make sure that I talked about vicarious emotions, because I want to bring in my part, that I want my reader to be picturing themselves shivering on the refrigerator shelf and it's dark and a family member opens the door. Oh, Molly, Molly, boom. Back in the dark and the cold. See, I want to put my reader there. And that's vicarious. So that word vicarious had to go in there. And then otherwise, emotions solidify memory. That came right from her. And then I had to say a refrigerator guy, because, oh yeah, now I know exactly what she's talking about. I know who wrote it, even without deciphering CS underscore. I know that book. And I even remember visually what the page looked like now. That's the kind of power that you want to pack into your Zettelkasten. Then, taking these key words and indexing them one after another with this whole tag phrase, you're just telling your subconscious, feast on this, woo, woo, woo. And your subconscious mind is going to delight in this. It loves feelings. That's where feelings are stored. It was already shivering with refrigerator guy, and it is not as nonverbal as people would like you to believe. Let me tell you, if you remember that video, Neil deGrasse Tyson and the dog Chaser, who knows 1,000 words. Now, if a dog can identify 1,000 toys by name, your subconscious mind can understand a phrase. It does not store information verbally, but it comprehends verbal information perfectly. It doesn't reason the way the other brain works. It reasons through feelings. But you know that it does, because you know you have conversations in your dreams. And that's proof of it right there. So to me, this is how you build a powerful Zettelkasten. This is how you build a Zettelkasten that has a voice in your box. And this is how you build a Zettelkasten that helps you make your contribution. Now, of course, when I put this part about there being two places where you could put your character, the vicarious place and the empathetic place, that's not really new information. It's just me bringing what I know into this card. But it will interact with something else that will bring it into complete information. And that is, of course, the conversation that this card joins, which is about being able to create emotions in your reader by placing them in the struggle, which is the next step above vicarious. Vicarious is a generic, by making them feel for the character, feel that they are the character experiencing the emotions instead of just sympathizing. Sympathizing gets mirror neurons going. Vicarious feelings hit much more deeply, and those can be stimulated through the struggle. Of course, that's what I discovered. Well, I didn't really discover that either. I found it in other resources and discovered that it could be applied to fiction. So that's what a Zettelkasten will do for you. But if you clutter up your Zettelkasten with how many factoids, you could have had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 extra cards. If you captured all of these factoids, you could have had this card and 9 others piled behind it. Do you think you could have taken 10 more cards and put what you got from the book and your response and composed a tagline and indexed it not once but 10 times? Would you keep that up, or would you start saying, I'll just put down the factoid? I wouldn't blame you. And I said, don't clutter up your box. From here, you can get right back to the bid card. You have all the facts you need. one exception. What if you're on the debate squad, or you're in a field where those facts are the very things that you need to have at your fingertips? In that case, now I make 10 name cards? No, now you don't make 10 name cards. You still only make one name card, but you put a star right under the number, and you flip it over, and the really important facts you put right on the back of the main card, where if you need to have them, there they are, but I bet you won't have to flip it over, because you will remember that 3.5 million people saw that last episode, but 50 million tweeted about it. It'll just be there because of your emotional involvement with this card. And why? Oh, I think we heard from our author, Carmen Simone. Why? Because emotions solidify memory. We're not really learning it. We already knew. We're reinforcing it, but we're also doing it. And that is the power of the Zettelkasten. Because when this card goes into place, and I didn't go through that part of the power that this card has in its conversation, that also gives you a pop of emotion and energy. So that's how you want to work with your Zettelkasten. Don't make it a little prompt card for some kind of rote memory. Don't do that. Make it alive with thoughts and ideas. What an exciting conversation that this is going to have. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.